This week on ATG Cast, Podcast of the Wills sits down with Matt and Sean from Blue Bantha Milk Co. as we dig into Chapter 4 of our Return of the Jedi Canon study. Grace, peace, and welcome to Podcast of the Wills, a podcast that treats Star Wars like a sacred text. I'm your host, Nick Milkey. I'm excited to be here for another episode as we continue to dig into Return of the Jedi with our Canon study series. This week we are going to be in Chapter 4 with our special guests Matt and Sean, who are part of the Blue Bantha Milk Co. You're going to get to know them more in the episode, but before we get to that, a couple of important things for you to be aware of. If you aren't sure, you're not completely up to speed on what's going on, I, Nick, from Podcast of the Wills, have joined forces with my good friend Pete from Around the Galaxy to create the ATG Cast feed, and we are partnering up with both of our shows. So every other week in the podcast feed on Thursdays, you're either going to get Around the Galaxy or you're going to get Podcast of the Wills. Last week it was Pete. This week it's me. Next week it'll be Pete. You kind of get the idea of how that works. So that's what we're doing with our shows. You're also going to get every Saturday morning, you're going to get Pete's 5-minute Disturbances in the Force news wrap-up from the week before. No spin, no clickbait. All the latest news and happenings in the Star Wars world. And also, because we have so many great Disney Plus Star Wars offerings that are going to be coming out all this year, Pete and I have brought back on Friday nights our streaming Star Wars call-in style sports radio version of a Star Wars talk show. Pete and I get together, sometimes with a guest, we have a drink, and we talk about whatever episode just aired. We talk about what we see happening, what we think might be coming up, and you get to be a part of that in the live chat. So we're always thankful if anybody joins us on Friday evenings. That's on the ATG Cast YouTube page. Free and available to everyone. I say free and available to everyone because we also have a Patreon program. If you are a part of the ATG Cast Patreon, you already know this. If you don't know for sure what that means, for as little as $3 a month, you can subscribe to the ATG Cast Patreon, and that's going to get you some really great features. The first one is going to be anytime I or Pete record any of our shows, you get to be a part of the live studio audience for that. You get to hang out in the chat, watch the shows as they get recorded, because they don't always get released at the same time they get recorded. So you kind of get an early sneak peek. We do early releases of the shows. We do stickers, swag. We're going to do some meetups coming up sometime soon, probably virtually because of, the state of the world. But there's a lot of really great stuff in there. So we would love for you to consider being a part of the ATG Patreon. You can go to patreon.com/ATGcast to learn all about that. If you're still not sure, shoot one of us a message. We'll be glad to help you sort it out, come up with any details, answer questions, all that kind of good stuff. Also, merchandise. There's Around the Galaxy merchandise, there's Podcast of the Wills merchandise, there's streaming Star Wars shirts. Pete has made a lot of really great designs for streaming Star Wars. You're going to want to check those out. Look for the links to any of that in any of our Twitter bios. That's the easiest way to find it. We can also get them in the show notes if you want to click in there. Lots of exciting things happening this year with ATG Cast and this new partnership. And most importantly, we are thankful that you, our dedicated friends and listeners, are along for the ride with us. So we look forward to doing what we're doing, continuing to do it better, and also hopefully coming up with some new ideas as we go forward and as we get, again, so many new Star Wars shows, so many new things that are happening. But now, the reason you're here, Chapter 4 of our Return of the Jedi Canon study with Matt and Sean from Blue Bantha Milk Company. What's up, gentlemen? How are y'all?
Hello.
Hey.
How's it going?
Hey.
We're good.
Hey, Nick. How are you?
I'm wonderful, and I'm excited to have both of you here tonight to hang out and talk. We're going to get to Return of the Jedi in a little bit. We're going to get to Return of the Jedi in a little bit, but before we get to that, I may have some Podcast of the Wills listeners who don't know who you guys are. If I do, that's shame on them. But let's start out, and we'll let Matt go first, and then we'll go with Sean. Give us a little introduction to Matt and Sean. Tell us a little bit about Blue Bantha Milk and the stuff that you guys do.
Hi. So I'm Matt, the one with the red headphones for any of the patrons, patronus that you have watching. We get a little bit tripped up.
Expecto Patronum, that's right.
We don't know what to call them sometimes, like our friends. So it's interesting that we're on the podcast that treats Star Wars like a sacred text, because we probably treat it the opposite way, like anything but sacred, as much as we love it. So we've been doing this now for a couple of years as a YouTube channel, which did take itself quite seriously, and then a year ago. Yeah, it's been a year now, just over a year ago, we decided to start taking it far less seriously. And we create AI written fan fiction, and we perform it live and sometimes perform it as pre-recorded. And we've got a couple of different series going. We've done expansions of the canon, like a solo sequel. So we did Solo 2. We did episode 10 first as well. What else have we done? We've done rewrites. So we did most recently a rewrite of the Death Star attack from A New Hope, with all the same characters and a new dialogue and some new scenes as well. That was
the one that you did as a part of the Potathon, is that right?
Correct. Yes. Yeah. So we did that as part of Potathon, and that was a lot of fun. And we just continue to keep having fun, and I don't think that's going to be slowing down at all.
That's awesome. That's such a great thing to hear. And another one that you guys do are the Calrissian Chronicles, which we all love so much, with our friend Chris Ryans. Chris was actually on last week doing episode 2 of Return of the Jedi with me. And we love Chris and we love his Lando. So that's another great one. And, you guys get to see it firsthand, but watching him get some of those lines the first time and not knowing what's coming and trying to keep it together, I mean, that's worth the price of admission right there.
Oh, yeah. That's a part. Like we're writing like episodes 5 and 6 of that at the moment, and it's one of those things. Like the first couple of ones, we wrote them without having. Sorry, my baby's just getting his nappy change.
That's quite all right.
To me.
Quite all
right. But like episode 5 and 6, like we know Chris now, and we know what makes him laugh, and we know what he can't do and what he can do, and all that. So it's more fun. Like when the AI is producing something. In the past, you'd be like, "Ooh, is that a bit too weird? Is that a bit too this?" But now you're like, "No, I want to hear Chris say that."
Yeah. Well, and I know you guys have talked about this on other shows, but Sean, give me kind of the quick rundown of how the AI process works, the way you guys do this. I know I've heard you talk before about, having to go through and make edits and some of that, but give me kind of a quick capsule of how it works.
Yeah. So we use a program called InfoKit, and we give it a couple of scripts to start with. So like with Solo, we gave it obviously the script from Solo, and I think with that we have to like transcribe it ourselves because we couldn't find the script anywhere. And then we got some stuff from Force Awakens and just any sort of interactions with Lando and Han and Chewie and all that. And then you just put it in, and then write like a little like an opening crawl, and maybe give it like exterior Tatooine, and then press go, and then it'll produce like 1,000 words or 1,000 characters for you. And then sometimes it's just nonsense, and sometimes it'll be like it'll have the wrong format. It'll be like a news story, or it'll like a short story. So you have to kind of teach it to do a script, to do a screenplay, and then you press go. And then our job then is to keep it going in a certain direction, because it's quite common that it'll kind of get stuck in lists, or it'll repeat itself, or it will randomly, like I was doing one for the Calrissian Chronicles, and it started just producing tweets from an NBA player. Just giving me that, like a fake NBA player. I looked him up, doesn't exist. There was times like this guy's name was Larry Haffetz, Affetz. Looked him up, doesn't exist. But he had some very strong opinions about the rules of the NBA, apparently. And this was just like just loads and loads of that. And I had to like delete all that and go back to the start and then get it back into its own thing. So what we do is we just let it produce as much as possible. We wrangle it, we move it around. And then at the end, we have this big unwieldy beast. And then me and Matt sort of pass it back and forth. So I'll go for the whole thing and make edits, pass it back to him. He does it. And we just keep going back and forth. And it's a bit of a long process, but it's very fun because obviously a lot of it is helping the AI to like find the joke sometimes, because sometimes it'll be near something and you're like, now that just needs a punchline. That just needs a little button at the bottom just to put it in. That's what me and Matt will come in and write that, or we'll find something in the AI that can do it. And also as well, it's that sort of making that decision of like, okay, well, how crazy do we want this to go? Or in the case of episode 2.5, we had to like it got quite hardcore porn-y. And we had to kind of say, okay, what is our sort of what's our porn line? Threshold? Right. Yeah, where at what point does it cross a line and then it's not fun anymore? It becomes quite and that was a lot of fun because I think me and Matt both have different porn thresholds. So there was a lot of finding where I was like, because I'm like all very English and just like, oh my, they can't say that.
Learning about each other all along the way.
Yeah. So yeah, it's a lot of fun.
I have no comment on that.
Better to not incriminate yourself, Matt. Just we'll keep things moving. So in this, and I know, of course, you do projects that are, different lengths. An episode 2.5 or a solo 2 is going to be a longer, script, a longer show that ultimately you produce, as opposed to like a Calrissian Chronicles. I think most of them that I've watched, they've been about an hour, maybe just a little bit more than an hour. By the time you produce them and do the live read of it, how long does it take kind of start to finish to get to the point of doing an hour AI script?
Okay. Yeah, we can generally only get through, like, there's a reason why we can only do 4 a year, basically. Sure. That's all we've promised basically to our patrons. It's just like, look, it takes us a couple of months to do it and get it all like organized, because there's a team of 10 of us, that will be performing in the thing, right, or working on it in some way. So you've got to wrangle people and work with the schedules and timelines, and those big performances get split over 2. Mm-hmm. So, like for an hour, usually it's about an hour and a half to 2 hours of actual performance over 2 streams. And those streams are generally 2 hours themselves, just because there's a lot of faffing about that, it just is unavoidable. And, but getting through that, I'd call that a solid 2-month process. Mm-hmm. And then we usually need a month to decompress. After that, we're something that I think works really well with both Sean and I. Like, Sean's a writing machine. Like, he can seriously, if you give him like the task and say, "Hey, Sean, write this," he'll just like he loves writing. Sorry to put words in your mouth, Sean. But I think we both have a really healthy attitude towards like not overdoing it and just having fun with it. And like we take plenty of breaks through the year. We're not sitting there like trying to like bash out something for the sake of bashing it out every week, like we used to do when we first started. And it's been better, like crafting something over time and giving it a lot of attention and care creates a much better result.
Oh, without a doubt. And I think that shows in what you guys do, because I mean, these streams, these live reads that you guys have put on, in this corner of the Star Wars, online, whatever it is that we call this, that we all hang out in, they have really become legendary, and they have created so many fun moments. I mean, we've got, it's essentially canon now that Boba Fett eats fried chicken, sand beds or bed sand, and, all these things. We have a T-shirt, for God's sakes, with Chris Ryan's face on it that says boobs in parentheses, because it creates these moments. And I'm not saying necessarily that boobs is the result of like the arduous care that you put into this process, but the humor and even the community that it creates. Because if you watch these streams like I've done, it's clear the people that are doing them are having a blast. We're all laughing. There's nothing better than when somebody breaks trying to keep a serious face, pretending to be Boba Fett eating fried chicken, or, when Claire's trying to be Chewbacca, or any of these other things that are happening. Like, you just laugh, but that's what Star Wars is supposed to be. And I'd love to kind of circle it back to what you hit on very, very briefly, which was before you guys leaned into this thing as kind of the full-time Blue Bantha Milk deal, y'all were producing or attempting to produce more serious stuff, right? Y'all were doing essays, y'all were doing, like we all want to produce content because we're creative people, but there becomes a point where, are you having fun, or is it something you feel like you have to do? And I feel like what I've heard you talk about before, the transition was, this is the fun thing. And it's also unique, because how many Star Wars podcasts are there, for crying out loud? I mean, I'm one of 7 million. So y'all found something very specific and niche and have leaned into it, and it shows. talk about that just for a minute and kind of that transition that you guys kind of decided to make.
Oh, it was actually really good because when me and Matt met up, we'd kind of just got out of a COVID lockdown, and we went to the pub before Christmas, and to exchange Christmas presents and all that. And Matt said he had this idea for this AI thing, and we were sort of like, okay, well, that would be a cool thing to do with the essays. We'll do a big one of these AI things, essays, and then another big thing.
Right.
And as soon as we did the first one, episode 10, the amount of fun we had writing it, putting it together, bouncing ideas off each other, and then seeing it performed, and then seeing the reaction to it being performed and all that, there wasn't really kind of a moment where either of us were clinging to the essays. We sort of both were chatting, and we're like, let's not do it anymore. Let's just do this. It was very much, I think we were both instantly like, this is heaps of fun. Whereas the essays were beginning to feel like homework assignments that we were setting ourselves, and not getting grades on, just being yeah. There wasn't kind of a big discussion or one person was arguing for anything. It was just sort of a natural transition. We were like, this is super fun. And even though it takes more time to produce than an essay, it's less editing, it's less finding clips. There's zero backlash, because tons of essays we did, you do end up opening YouTube and just getting paragraphs and paragraphs of people telling you why you're wrong and so forth.
Right.
Whereas with the Banthaverse, with the AI things, the only negative comments we've had are people for some reason complaining that the actors are laughing too much, or it would be better if just one person performed the script, like an audiobook.
Right.
Okay, cool. So we're on the right track.
So they've missed the point entirely, is what you're saying.
They've completely missed the idea. It's it's the person who kind of says, oh, well, why isn't SNL rehearsed in advance? And, it should be every line of dialogue should be memorized. And if someone breaks, they should be fired. It's no, that's
not what this is. Because it turns out the people that are doing this with you, they're all just hobbyists and, people having fun the same way.
It's so much fun because we give them this insane stuff to do, and every single person, bar none, who has come and performed has given 1,000% and gone all in. And we've made them do weird stuff. Frankly,
yes,
Chris
as somebody who's watched all of them, Chris Ryans loves you guys. It's clear because he keeps coming back to do these things over and
either
over
that
again.
Or he's a real glutton for punishment. Because, some of the stuff he says is just oh god, sorry.
And it is so fun as somebody who watches these and has watched all the ones you've done, and of course, again, laughed like a crazy person. There are times if I've got an earbud in and I'm watching it and I'm laughing and my wife is like, what the hell are you laughing? What could possibly be so funny? And I have to go, it really wouldn't work for you. You wouldn't get it. It wouldn't be funny to you. But to get to watch it and see so many people that are my friends on there doing those things, whether it's Pete or Claire or Scotty or Dan, all these people that you get in there, that just makes it that much better to see people that I've gotten to know through this podcasting space, and to watch people to watch your friends have fun. That's the best. Why wouldn't you want to tune into something like that 2 or 3 or 4 times a year? That's the kind of fun that Star Wars is and should be more than it is most of the time.
It's something that really, maybe 2 years ago, someone, I can't remember who said it to me. It's listening to podcasts can sometimes take on kind of a bit of a social interaction of its own. And we certainly all experience that. It's just I wake up on a Saturday morning and I know that it's Friday night over in the States. Someone's going to be streaming, doesn't matter who it is, and I'll be just waking up, and I'll open up YouTube on my phone and just be I think yesterday, so it was Pink Milk was streaming, so I watched Pink Milk. Well, I think you and Pete were streaming as well.
We were on last night as well. Yeah.
Yeah. So I woke up and just go in there and it's an odd thing to sort of be interacting with, I guess, what you would call kind of entertainment,
Mhm.
because it's entertainment, but it's not. You're interacting with it in a way that is literally like you're just in a chat room with your friends, because basically everyone in the chat room is someone that you recognize or know, even if it
Right.
is just a handle.
Mhm.
The people on the screen are people that you recognize or know or have done some sort of collaboration with, and like particularly with COVID, it's really just filling this space, this void, with all the lockdowns of kind of
Mhm.
like just hanging out. And so take that a step further, I feel like, you know, take the pandemic away, like groups of friends like to have activities to go do,
Sure.
you know, and sometimes it's just sitting around having a beer and having a chat, and sometimes it's going and having an activity, going and doing
Right.
something fun, going go-karting, going whatever, going watching a
Mhm.
movie and all that sort of stuff. And it kind of occurs to me that I feel like some of what we've been doing has filled that. So I keep moving my hands out of frame to accentuate. It's like that that's going to feel weird.
That's
Yeah,
right.
it fills some of that gap, like the bigger activity gap. I think of like Alex Damon. You know, Alex Damon does improv classes,
Mhm.
you know, for fun. And I know that there was a period of time where he couldn't do them, you know, because of COVID and all
Right.
that. And so, like, I've never done improv classes, but this is kind of like going and doing improv classes, even though it's
For
scripted.
sure.
You know what I mean? Like,
Oh, I know
it's
exactly what you mean.
yeah.
And that's something that I've said a bunch of times, that Podcast of the Wills has been around since like 2017. Like, I've had this podcast for a long time. It was more sporadic 3 and 4 and 5 years ago when we first got started, because we didn't have StreamYard. We didn't have all the things that we have now. Zoom wasn't a thing because of the pandemic has actually kind of fast forwarded our ability to do a lot of these kinds of things. And so one of the things that I always harp on, and it started with Force Connect, which was the Friday night, Jackson and Pete and Andy and all those guys, it was the Friday night bar that none of us could go to because we were all in various stages of lockdown. And so we could all still get drunk on a Friday night and laugh and talk about Star Wars, or just, watch Dan Miller drink high alcohol by volume pumpkin beers and, not know what's going on. There are all these moments that brought this, this circle that we're all in together, and it's created relationships, just like you said. It's created these opportunities that, like, with, the lead in for like Celebration, which may or may not happen. And I don't have tickets for Celebration at this point, but I said last week, I would consider just buying a plane ticket, even if I didn't have tickets to Celebration, just to go and hang out with all these friends that I've made, and to get to be in real life and have a beer and hug people's necks and say, I'm so glad we've gotten to be friends over something weird like Star Wars and the internet.
Oh yeah. Well, me and Matt live in the same city, but we met because of Star Wars and the internet. I joined a Facebook group that Matt ran, and we ended up meeting up for a beer, and that's it. As easy
and there's
as that.
So many stories of that. I mean, Alice and Laura, that's their story. They were doing trivia in Chicago, and a friend said, "Hey, I think you should meet this person." They went and had drinks and went, "Hey, let's start a podcast." And now they're a part of what y'all do. There's so many. Scotty and Jerry met at Celebration and started Bombad Cast. Like, there's so many in-person connections that happened like that again is continuing to grow and change all that up. So it's really neat. And I guess ultimately what I'm saying is the stuff that you're doing is certainly a part of the backbone of this community that we have. It connects us up in a lot of different ways, whether we're watching it, whether it's somebody that's in it. It's that fun that we all get to gather around and go, holy crap, remember that time that thing happened? We were all there together. It was a communal moment, even when we can't be in community.
See, I do like that. I do like that the Banthaverse streams are events that people like to be at in the moment and see it live. Mm-hmm. I do like that a lot. I like that. It's sort of one of those things of like, it's almost like, like The Mandalorian or something when it's on, and you're like, oh, I need to watch this in real time because it's very, people are going to start making references to things that I don't understand, and I need to have this. I need to risk COVID to go watch Spider-Man No Way Home because I cannot I cannot hear about this secondhand. I need to be there when this happens.
That's right. You gotta get it yourself.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Well,
the information, not COVID.
That's right.
Yeah.
The information. Yeah, COVID we could do without. We could do without that part. Well, as we start to transition a little bit towards our study, we're talking about Return of the Jedi. We're in chapter 3 of our canon study, 3 of 6. Before we dive into that, one of the questions that I usually ask my guests are, what were your earliest memories of seeing Return of the Jedi? Do you remember when you saw it the first time? Tell me a little bit about that, Matt. Do you have a origin story with Jedi?
It's the same as pretty much all of them, because I was born in 1982.
Okay.
By the time I was old enough to watch any Star Wars, all of them had been released, and they had pretty much all been on television in Australia. So my dad had taped all of them on VHS. So I got to watch all of them kind of together at the same time. Like, the one thing that sort of stood out isn't so much about Return of the Jedi itself. It's more that I was fortunate enough to be able to see Caravan of Courage in a cinema.
Oh.
And there's just that, there's that little kid vague memory overlap there, because like I know it was Caravan of Courage in an Ewoks movie, but it was Ewoks and the other movie had Ewoks, and so like there's just this kind of morphing of images, and I don't really remember when any of it happened. I just remember it was there, and it's some of my earlier memories of anything really, because what else is there? It's like, here's a Lego. I don't know. Yeah, so I don't remember when it was. It blends a bit, and I do remember though that the Jabba the Hutt stuff when I was a kid was just my favorite thing in the world.
Absolutely.
Like, loved it, but it terrified me as well. And yeah, it really scared the crap out of me, I gotta say, but like really loved it because I thought Jabba was just so amazing. Like, and even on those crappy old TVs with mono sound and all that, like, when he's addressing Luke and basically like calling his bluff and all that, like his voice is so booming, like booming. And I remember that very specifically, just like it being like, well, like, oh, like he's don't mess with him, he's bad, like that really stood out.
Yeah. Well, and one of my questions, and I feel like you've probably already answered it, to be a kid that age and to basically get all 3 of them at the same time, which one do you remember as a kid? Which one was your favorite? Was it Jedi? Because in my mind, Jedi feels like the one most suited to a kid that would be that age that would get all 3 of them. But what was your favorite?
Yeah, it was Return of the Jedi, I think, at the time. Like, it kind of, even though it was my favorite, I would watch A New Hope a lot more. And it wasn't I think it's just because at an early age I was like a little bit OCD. Like, it just, I'm going to watch Star Wars. Well, I can't just watch the last one. I have to watch them in. I've just watch them in order, and then and then something would distract me. So I'd like, I was a 4-year-old or a 5-year-old, like, intent on rewatches, like, and binging rewatches, but I'd never get through them all. Like, so, or I'd rarely get through them all. But yeah, I think it was Jedi. Jedi was probably
you were just ahead of the curve with that whole binge watching thing. That was all.
Yeah. Real leader.
Real groundbreak, setting the tone for everybody else. Well, Sean, what about you? What about, do you have an origin with Jedi? Are y'all, kind of the same age?
So I was born 1984. My first memory, I have like a crazy thing of like, I think my first memory is like Christmas in 1987. And that's like my first ever memory, and going downstairs and my dad being sat on the living room floor, and he just had loads of the Return of the Jedi toys, like all in the boxes, like in your background there.
Sure.
And just like me, obviously being 3 years old, not really understanding what Christmas was, wondering why there was all these toys here, and then having someone have to explain to me, oh no, these are your toys. you can open these and play with them. But yeah, same as Matt. I had all three on VHS, taped off ITV at Christmas.
Okay.
Any English people in the comments will know ITV, I guess. Had the advert breaks, stuff like that. Had like a news break and things, and I would just like fast forward all of that. Jedi was definitely my favorite. It's actually quite weird for me because I used to watch Jedi over and over and over again to the point where, you know, certain scenes like the kind of like static bar would like up the screen because the tape was just bollocks.
Right.
And then I'd watch Empire, but I would fast forward the Yoda bits because I thought they were boring. I'd never watch A New Hope. Now, 30 something years later, Empire's my favorite. The Yoda bits are my favorite. I love New Hope. And Jedi. So interesting with Jedi, I'd sort of gone off it completely. I watched it with my wife before Force Awakens, and she was like, she's got this whole thing with Star Wars. Like, she hates the market scenes or the bar scenes. She's like, I hate the scenes where we have to like trot out a load of people in makeup and all the aliens. Like, yeah, I get it. It's in space. You know, she's quite dismissive of it. So yeah, we didn't really. She was like, no, don't like this. We skipped over the Jabba bit. We skipped most of the Ewoks bit, and watching it with someone else and hearing those complaints, I was like, oh yeah, maybe it is a bit shonky. And then I did realize that, like, you know, the opening bits with Jabba don't really tie into the rest of the movie and so on.
Sure.
But then last year, me and Matt went to, God, was that last year? Yeah. Went to IMAX and we got to see all three of the originals one after another.
Okay.
And Jedi as a cinema movie, fantastic. Oh my God, what a film. Just like all the jokes were landing. All the scenes that I was like watching at home, I thought they would drag just super quick. I'll maintain the space battle in Jedi is the best space battle.
It's a really great space battle, and probably my favorite visual scene in all of Star Wars might be the Falcon as it's coming out of the Death Star right before it blows up. In that thing as it's coming out of and those just keeps going by the superstructure pieces. You know, right before the explosion as it shoots out and Lando yells, like, there's something about that. Well, one of the other questions I have, and this is the last one before we jump into the study itself, because this is a show that treats Star Wars as a sacred text, and because obviously we are people who love Star Wars, we commit a lot of our free creative time to various Star Wars pursuits, whether it's collecting, writing, producing, all that kind of stuff. One of the questions I love to ask my guests is, in the course of your experiences with Star Wars, have you had a Star Wars spiritual experience? Have you had a moment at some point in your Star Wars life where it was more than just a movie? It could be the first time you saw something. It could be a communal experience, a time where, as the kids would say today, Star Wars just hit differently. Is there some moment that you can put your finger on? And either one of you are welcome to go first if you have one. What is your Star Wars spiritual experience?
I think mine was, so I'm 37 years old, but I only learned to drive about 5 years ago.
Okay.
When I moved to Australia about 7 years ago. And then as soon as I moved here, my wife was like, yeah, you know, I'd taught overseas for yonks and I'd lived in England and I just survived on public transport. But when we got to Australia, she's like, yeah, this place is massive. You're not going to survive. You're going to need to be able to drive. So I got my L plates and I started doing my lessons and so on. And then I think the day before I took my test, the first trailer for Rogue One came out. And when Chirrut Imri is saying, like, I will, you know, I fear nothing. All is as the Force wills it. And I remember just being like incredibly nervous, standing outside the testing center, waiting for the teacher and the driver to come out to take me on my test, and just being like, you know, everyone who I knew I was taking the test because I couldn't keep my mouth shut. And I told my family, and I told my Australian family, and I told my English family. So everyone was just like waiting to find out what I'd done, which in hindsight was probably silly. I probably should have just not told anyone anything.
That's right.
And I just remember being outside, just waiting, and just thinking that, just like, oh, I feel nothing. Oh, also, and I did find that it really sort of can't, like it's like in Dune, you know, like a litany against fear. You know, just sort of repeating it over and over again. I just find myself calm. And then when I was driving, I just kept that in the back of my mind. It was just like, okay, there's no point being nervous, and just thinking about that. And yeah, so that's probably been as close for me as I've had, because I don't have that many spiritual experiences with movies. I don't think, I'm not really, I don't know. Now you've put that in my head, I'll have to start thinking about it. But yeah, that's fine, Matt.
Okay, I love that. Matt, what about you?
I think probably The Force Awakens. Actually, no, not to think probably, definitely The Force Awakens, because, you know, like in this age bracket that we're in, it's I think we've all had that experience of, you know, Star Wars being the thing that you had when you grew up, and then you have all the things that you get distracted with, and all the stuff that is frankly more important as you go through, you know, like becoming an adult and all of that sort of stuff. You have, like, I'm in the right age group to be, you know, very, very acutely aware of, you know, like the prequel backlash, and just how, for a period there, just how unfashionable it was to have any sort of public association with the franchise, like, or you know, sort of show off any kind of fandom. You know, like coming out of that very, very frankly cynical kind of era of like Gen X films and all that sort of stuff, and like all that humor that sort of went along with it, like then into South Park, all that sort of stuff. Like, there was no kind of nerdy fandom for me for a big period of time, but it was always sort of like something that I, you know, wanted to sort of be engaged with. And then The Force Awakens, at a meta level, definitely awakened something, because like that first trailer, like, kind of shocked me in a sense. Like, I don't think I've been so prone to tears in film ever before that. Like, you know, I would watch a movie and be like, oh yeah, that's a sad bit, you know, whatever it is, or that's a happy bit, you know, and I might be like, if it's something really, really shockingly sad or whatever like that, I'd get a bit teary, but like never on something that just, I'd never had something hit that button before, you know, like that button that opened up something that you'd long forgotten about, or some memories or something like that. And yeah, like it was when the Falcon sort of does its, you know, it's like it's big upside down and flying through and all that, and then the big logo and the Chewie we're home and all that, and I just wept. I still, like, even now I'm like hold it together, but yeah, like I wept, like, when that happened. And I remember I was at work, and like we watched it so many times, like just so many times, and it was the months, sort of, or however long it was, maybe even a year, I don't know, but it seemed, in memory, it flew by. But like just that time between the trailer and the movie coming out, where it was just like all bets are off, floodgates opened, like, you know, that's it, I'm just all in on this. And I don't think I'd had that experience of being so all in on something ever before. And that was it. It's carried on since then.
I love that. Those are both excellent responses to my silly Star Wars spiritual experience question. So thank you for sharing those.
Welcome.
As we transition into the study itself, we're going to talk about Return of the Jedi, and the minutes that we've got are basically Luke has parted ways with Han and Leia and the crew right after the sail barge, and he's going back to Dagobah. And then we're going to end right around the time that Han is looking at the Falcon, and, you know, actually when they jump to hyperspace in the Imperial shuttle headed for Endor. So we've got that segment of the movie. That's our sacred text, as if you will, for this part of our study. So the first question, and I don't care who goes first, either one of you, it's great. The first question is, what is the text telling us? And I always kind of couch this as, this is the literal interpretation. In these minutes, as we've looked at our sacred text, what are you literally getting out of these minutes?
So, I mean, it's quite literal in the sense of we're told. So I'm not sure if this. I think this is true. I think I've read this somewhere that like Lucas consulted with child psychologists and they said, yeah, you know what I'm going to say.
Yeah, I've read that before. Yeah.
So basically, someone that children would trust had to say Darth Vader is Luke's father. Otherwise, children wouldn't believe it. So you've got that element of like, okay, well, that's what it's telling us. It's telling us that Vader is Luke's father. It's telling us there's another Skywalker. It's explaining why Obi-Wan was so cagey in New Hope about who Anakin is. And then it tells you who the sister is. So you've got like those kind of sequences together. And then if I've got my timeline correct here, you sort of have that and you have Yoda leave the story and then the Emperor enters the story. And you're told
other way around.
Other way around, yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Emperor shows up first.
Emperor first, then all the Dagobah.
Yeah. Yep. So you have like, I guess you're being told, here's your big villain. Here's the puppet master who we've kept in our pocket and shown you. I think he's mentioned once in New Hope. He's seen on a hologram in Empire, and now here he is. And obviously, the fact that there's an Empire has implied an Emperor, so you've known he's there the whole time.
Sure.
So we're introducing this new villain. Luke's being cut off from his support structure because he's losing Yoda, and he's getting this bit of an info dump all at once of like, yes, Vader's your father. Yes, you have to fight him. Yes, there's another Skywalker, and yes, it's Leia. All at once.
And I don't think I noticed as much in previous watchings, and of course, I look at it for these studies in a different way, a little bit more critically. But you're exactly right. He gets a bunch of information in that little bit mixed in with Yoda dying. Like there's a lot that's being thrown his way.
Yeah. And a lot of...
He's got to take a lot on.
He's got to take a lot on. And it's a lot of foreshadowing as well. It's a lot of like, this is what, this is how the dark side is going to tempt you. And then we are going to, minutes later, in later minutes, we are going to see that. Sure. We are going to see that exact temptation occur. And it's I guess it's like final lessons as well, because from that point onwards we don't see Obi-Wan and we don't see Yoda again until the very final image or final-ish image of the whole film. So this is very much Luke being like, go for it, mate. And also he does get told off for leaving his training. Like Yoda does still sort of say, should have stayed. Just say
that's right. Yeah, that moment cracked me up because there was. And Chris and I talked about this last week in chapter 2, because he shows up at Jabba's palace. He's got the confidence. He announces himself as Jedi Knight and friend of Captain Solo. But up to that point, we kind of were wondering, who conferred the title of Jedi Knight upon him? Did he give that to himself? And Chris and I had kind of talked about, the idea that we always have known that Jedi had to go through trials, and was Luke's trial in the Rancor pit. But what we also know, and I had forgotten until I watched the minutes for this week, is when Yoda's laying there, he says to Yoda, "Oh, so I am a Jedi." And even while he's dying, Yoda laughs. And he's like, "Hold on, son, we're not there yet. You still have to go and face Vader." So that's really the trial. And he's getting that dump of information. So I love that even while Yoda is dying, there's still that very Yoda-like thing of him being like, don't get so cocky. You're not all that you think you are yet.
Yeah, no.
What about you, Matt? What were the things that you kind of picked up literally in these minutes?
More. There's a lot that I sort of picked up thematically, but just little like literal things that I hadn't quite noticed. Or at least hadn't quite sort of stood out in quite a while. Because I said to you offline, but before we started this recording, it's like, Sean and I had been writing for the better part of the week, and so doing the homework for this last night, I had to watch these minutes like a good few times, just because trying to pick it apart was a little bit difficult. But what I did sort of really notice this time was just like, everyone's telling Luke what he has to do. Like he's just being told. There's so much instruction that is being given to him. And again, I won't dive too much into the theme just yet, but like, it's really evident just how many directions he's being pulled in these minutes. You know, like there's the external force of the Emperor that's wanting to pull him in one direction. He's got Yoda that's pushing him in another direction. You've got Obi-Wan that is pushing him in the same direction, and then at the end of that, when he rendezvous back with the rest of the rebels, he's got his allegiances to his friends that are pulling him in another direction. Right. It's like as a set of minutes, like it's what was it? It was minutes 30 something. Like it's not even halfway through the film, and like
to 53. It's just under 20 minutes.
Yeah, and like setting up like a real internal conflict for our main protagonist very early.
For sure.
From a technical perspective, I think it's a really good move. Really good move. Like, I mean, that's the sort of thing that you can carry on for like much of the film, and it works better, I think, when you have these conflicts early on, because like, you know, you oftentimes can see a film where they sort of add the conflicts bit by bit, and then whatever some of them might happen quite late in the picture, and they tend not to land as heavily, I don't think.
Correct.
You know, unless it's something monumental. But like, yeah, as Sean hit on, like Luke really just gets slapped in the face with a lot in that one moment,
which is so interesting, because coming on the heels of last week, and this is again something that Chris and I talked about, where we get super confident Jedi. Luke shows up at Jabba's palace. He's wearing all black. He force chokes the guard. He comes in. He's doing all these things. He stands in front of Jabba. He's not intimidated. But the split second he drops into the Rancor pit, he goes into panic mode. Like, he's nervous again. Like, he temporarily loses that confidence because he's still sorting this crap out. Like, he doesn't know fully who he is yet, all the things that he's going through. Defeats the Rancor. And then all of a sudden we're on the sail barge and he's confident again. And he's like, just stick close to Chewie and Lando. Everything's cool. Flips, kicks. You know, he's mercurial. He's going up and down as he's sorting this stuff out. And you're exactly right. We get that in these minutes too. Like, he shows up to Yoda to fulfill his commitment. I'm coming back. And he kind of thinks he's the business. And then pretty quickly, Yoda puts him in his place and then takes his feet out from under him with the sister bit. Yeah. But then he's also right back on it when he's talking to Obi-Wan, and he knows immediately, oh, it's Leia. Like, it's a very interesting character thing. And I think, Matt, you hit on it exactly. To get that much that early in this movie, when I was breaking it down into the 6 sections that we usually do, and I was sorting it, I realized just with these minutes that I gave you guys, there's still so much movie left.
Yeah.
And we've set up this much stuff early on.
Well, there's an argument that could be made by me now. That
we'll allow it.
Thank you. The opening sequence of Return of the Jedi, up until where our minutes start, is the end of Empire. That's Empire ending. That's solving that. This movie starts at these minutes. Right. Like, these are the opening scenes, because you get your antagonists established. The thing Matt said about, so the Emperor's got plans, Yoda's got plans. Obi-Wan is telling him to do something, but has completely lost his credibility to a certain degree, because Luke's like, well, why didn't you just tell me this? Right? Why didn't you tell me this earlier and we could have done something about it? Instead, you're giving me this nonsense about points of view and just wiffle waffle, and I don't know what you're talking about. And then obviously, like Matt said, he ends up with the rebels, and then suddenly he's like, well, I can't let my friends go to the planet without me, and I definitely can't let Leia, because she's my sister and I need to keep her safe, and I need to protect the rebellion. But it's all of these ideas are sort of conflicting with each other, and this is when the movie really starts. But yeah, so that's sort of my weird argument with Return of the Jedi, that the opening sequence sort of doesn't do anything. It's like a cold open. It's sort of like previously on Return of the Jedi.
Yeah.
And then but I think that idea of like this being the opening and this being really where, dare I say it, the Jedi does begin to return. Kind of like, but going off that, what you were saying there about what you were talking about with Chris, that is that is helping me warm to those opening sequences, in the sense of like, if you don't worry about the rest of the characters and you just focus on Luke, then yeah, that's great. That's great character development. He's showing himself to be this kind of like, yeah, I'm a Jedi Knight. Like, say I'm a Jedi Knight. And then I do love the fact that then, like you say, he goes to Yoda, and Yoda's like, you're nothing. You should have stayed and trained. Yep. You should have let your friends die.
Yeah.
Yoda.
Well, and those moments, even in Empire, so, they hit him with the whole, you have to make a choice. And if you make the choice, you have to deal with the consequences, all that kind of stuff. And it's very, it's the most Jedi thing that can happen. Here, you can make a choice, but if you make the wrong one, it's your fault. And if you make the right one, your friends may die, but we're not going to tell you anything. And that is teaching to a degree, that's parenting to a degree, but like, it feels also in the Star Wars and Jedi universe, it's more exaggerated on a certain level. And
confronting fear is the confronting fear is the something of the Jedi. What is the line? Confronting fear
is the burden. The burden of
the
all
burden
Jedi.
Of the Jedi. Well, that's the thing. You're thinking about what he says about it's my favorite Last Jedi line, which is we are what they grow beyond. That's the true burden of a master. That's the one that I quote that all the time, especially as a parent of 4 daughters. Like, I want them all to grow beyond me. I want them to, be better. But ultimately, and you both hit on it with this first question, there's so much that we're being told. We're being told, there's anxiety, there's eagerness. Vader's super eager to get back to Luke and that whole thing. The Emperor says it when he shows up on the Death Star. Luke, he's eager to get back to Yoda, and then he finds out about Leia. There's just a lot of, almost like pent up energy. Like, where are we going? Let's make the next thing happen, which makes sense for this stage in the movie.
There's something that, just as you guys were chatting, how Sean, you said it, like Obi-Wan has basically kind of like lost credibility, to Luke and whatnot. I think the Obi-Wan scene is a really interesting one, because there's such kind of like definitive kind of direction in the others. Like so the Emperor is very definitively, this is what's going to happen, and this is I've foreseen it. It's going to happen. Yoda is very much like, this is what must happen, and this is what you will do. It's very, very, very definitive. And Obi-Wan's a little bit more like, like obviously he's explaining and giving context and all that, but like Luke's whole, like, paraphrasing here, why didn't you tell me? We saw kind of why he couldn't be told with the Rancor pit scene, I guess, because he as Luke thinks he's got the answers and he knows everything that's going on, but like, you stick him in front of one big monster and he like you said, he panics.
Yeah,
he panics. Like, if Obi-Wan had been truthful to him way back then, Luke wouldn't have gone on that journey. Luke would have freaked out. He would have sat in his little shed with his toy plane, just like going, yeah, it's fine. I'm going to be a farmer. Like, I don't think he would have.
That's right. All the blue milk.
Yeah, I don't think he would have answered the call. Like, I don't think he would, or at least not in the same way.
Well, and that's a really great point. And we see that with Luke in Empire. When he shows up on Bespin, he shows up to confront. He's really going to rescue his friends. He's not showing up to confront Vader. That's just what ends up happening. But he's doing the best, but he's fearful in those or lightsaber fights, when he's getting, air conditioning units thrown at him, with the Force as he falls out of a window. Like, he's scared. He's terrified. All that stuff. So then we get him now, and there's a confidence or a bravado that's as much show as it is anything else. He's putting on this, and so we get the glimpse in the Rancor pit, but then he kind of gathers himself for the sail barge. But of course, the evolution in the hero's journey, which is such a Star Wars Lucas thing, is that by the time he gets to the confrontation with the Emperor and Vader at the end of this movie, when he throws the lightsaber away and says, I'm a Jedi like my father before me, that's when he's finally come into his moment. And that's him reaching that point. And then, of course, we get that farther down the line in Last Jedi as someone who's worn down by life, which is another fascinating, amazing look at another part of the hero's journey that doesn't get talked about. But for where we're talking about right now, he's still working it out is really what I'm picking up in this first part of this first question.
Yeah.
So the second question, is, the first one was, what is the text telling us? The second question is, what is the text asking of us? And the way I see this is more the inspirational, and I think you even kind of said it before, Matt, kind of the thematic aspects of what are you getting from this that kind of speaks to you personally in these minutes.
Yeah.
I mean, it is literally asking us to be sad at the death of a Muppet
Yes,
and
it is.
succeed.
Yeah.
I mean, I've always said this about Empire and Jedi. The risk that you take making Yoda and not being a comedic role, not being a Jar Jar, not being something like that, but being like, oh no, this is the emotional crux of this movie and the teacher of your hero, and making that work is, I don't think you could even pull that off today.
Right.
No.
It's because people are too, I don't know, people aren't too cynical, but maybe people are too cynical.
Well, and they knew it because in Empire, they set it up countering your expectations. He's going to look for a great Jedi warrior, a great master, a great, all those things.
Yeah.
And of course, the line that I always carried with me growing up was when Yoda says, war does not make one great, because he's, I'm not who you think you're looking for, but I'm the person you're looking for. And that's exactly it, Sean. We're set up to go, holy crap, I feel this way about a little weird green guy.
Yeah. That's incredible.
Could you imagine if that was new? Like, could you imagine if that came out today? Could you imagine YouTube just like going, Disney, Star Wars, like their agenda of making small green things, like, why can't we have warriors? Why can't warriors just be warriors?
Why can't everything be the Rock?
They have done that. There's a guy who redraws all of like the High Republic characters how they should be, and the one of Yoda has like a six-pack. And it's not a joke. Like, it's a legitimate thing. This is like, if he's going to be this warrior, he should be this. And you're like, go.
Yeah.
Go.
Yeah. Just somebody with more time than things to do.
Exactly.
Brain cells.
That's great. So in the second question, what are the other inspirational things? Obviously, Sean, like you said, we're being asked to care about, this dying Muppet, literally. Yep. But what are the other things that you personally or individually are being told by this section of the movie?
I've got something here.
Yeah.
So there's this kind of concept of fate and inevitability that is being really heavily brought in, I think, in these scenes. And I'm going to stop. Just note that I'm cutting off that discussion of theme where the rebels turn back up again. So it's only the Emperor and Luke with Yoda and Obi-Wan scenes that I'm talking about.
Sure.
So I guess like where the proxy, or Luke's the proxy for us, I should say. Like where he's our point of view character for much of the film, and certainly these scenes, I think, where we're seeing everything through Luke's eyes. There's a lot of us and him being told basically to just kind of trust in fate, trust in a plan. It's bigger than you. But inevitability is the one word that sort of really sticks out to me when I think about it, because it's like, so the Emperor scene, like Emperor goes to Vader, makes it clear that he wants Luke for himself. The key line is, everything is proceeding as I have foreseen, i.e. it's inevitable.
Yep.
Luke goes to Yoda, confirms that Vader is his father, gives him a heavier burden, and then tells him, on top of that burden, like, with the other Skywalkers and all that sort of stuff, you'll have to face your dad again. Not just that you must, that you will. You will.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
it's inevitable.
Yeah.
Then Luke speaks to Obi-Wan. Confirms the whole thing that he was set on this path with some deception. Doesn't call it deception, but let's call it what it is. does the whole like, certain point of view line, but then reiterates toward the end of that scene that he must face Vader or else everything else is lost.
Yep.
Like it's inevitable, basically. Yeah. Like there is, Luke is being told that essentially he has no real choice in any of this.
Correct.
Obviously, he knows he's got a choice. Obi-Wan acknowledges the fact that he has a choice, but that his choice to do something other than just go with the flow will have grave consequences. Yeah. So I think that's what's being asked of us as well. Yeah. It's like that. Basically, like we have to, I think, grapple with that as well. Because, like, if Luke's our POV character, then what would you do?
Right.
Like what would you want to do? Like if you find out your dad's someone quite bad, okay, well, you're gonna go fight him. You're gonna go fight him, and the subtext of that, you're gonna go kill your dad.
Right.
Yeah.
That's what he's being told. Yeah. Gonna go fight him and his area manager. And
you can go to his workplace and fight him.
That's right.
In his boss's office.
Yep.
It's gonna be a whole thing. That's right.
And obviously he has to kill him. So I mean, like that's something that then all of us, I think, have to kind of grapple with the idea of. It's like, okay, well, should he?
Right.
Like, absolutely, should he do that? And Luke shows some reluctance in there, as well. Like, I think where does he say that he senses good in him? Is it to Yoda?
He says it to Obi-Wan.
He says it to Obi-Wan.
He says it to Obi-Wan.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So that's right. He says it to Obi-Wan, and Obi-Wan's just like, nah, he's all evil. He's twisted and evil. Nah, that's it. Kill him.
Well,
basically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it's very interesting as well, and sort of it's interesting actually. The two Jedi, the two kind of like agents of peace, are the ones who are saying like, just go kill him. That's it. And then just take him out. And Luke's like, no, there's good in him and so on. And then later on, Leia says like, well, just don't do it. Just run away. Just leave. And he's like, and like Matt said, he's gotten to a certain point where he begins to understand that, it is inevitable. He's like, well, I've got to. But it's an interesting, and I'm skipping past on minutes.
Yeah.
But like Luke, as he eventually, I feel like for him, the inevitability is less that later on, sorry, it's less that it's inevitable I'm going to kill him. It's more, it's inevitable that I'm going to face him. And then we will see how things go. Whereas Yoda and Obi-Wan are very much like, it's inevitable that you're going to have to stab him.
Right.
And we need you to do that. That would be super cool of you if you could do that.
It'd be really great if you'd go ahead and just take them both out while you're there.
Yeah, that would be A-okay. I'd be very happy with that.
Since you're up, go ahead and take care of this other thing too.
Yeah, you know what I mean? While you're there.
That's right.
And again, the burden of when we're gone, you'll be the last Jedi. That in itself is like an incredible burden for someone who, at this point, has only known about the Force for like 3 years.
Right. Yeah. It's still new. Wait, what do you mean I'm it? It's like, here, I mean, you get this thing and now it's just your problem. Good luck.
It's interesting to be told just moments. I was like, no, you say you're a Jedi, but you're not a Jedi. Oh, by the way, when we're gone, you'll be the last of us.
You'll be the last
you're
Jedi.
Yeah.
You're not one, but you're going to be the last of the not ones. Oh, and by the way, there is one more.
Anyway, peace.
Yeah, peace. That's again the most Jedi thing that can happen is for them to be a walking contradiction for a lot of
God,
the stuff they attempted to do.
Because we've talked a lot about obviously Luke and all that, but the like the rebel briefing scene again, which is a lot of exposition, a lot of setup for the rest of the movie. I guess it does it offers the inspiration for Lando of like, you can do bad things and come back. If your intentions are good, you can find your way back to the light, so to speak. Right. It also, weirdly, again, and I know this isn't really inspirational or thematic, but it is asking you to say, okay, well, why? I think it asks.
So,
That's
sure,
right. We
sure.
lost Sean, but that's all right
It
because that
asks.
thought was going to be good. What did it ask, Matt?
I have no idea. I have no idea what he was going to say before he got cut off. Is he still in the green room?
He is in the green room. We're waiting to get him back.
Hello.
There he
get
is.
My camera going again. Sorry, one moment.
He's
It was, as you said, it asks
you. No, I saw
Yes.
it. I saw it all happening, and saw you all kind of like talking shit about me when I was out of the room. It asked you to say, okay, second Death Star. The three people who blew up the first Death Star, Luke and Han and Chewie, we're not going to send them this time. We're going to send them down to the planet. They're not going to take their things, and that always wound me up of just like, why would you send them again? Yeah. They know how to do it.
They know what.
And I know obviously it's for the sake of so on and so on and so on, but like there's always just that's the son of one of those weird. There's a lot of things in Return of the Jedi where you're like, why would you want a 3PO on a mission in the jungle? And R2, he's on wheels.
That's right.
It doesn't seem like he's like those weird little things that like when I was a kid I was just like, this is great. Mm-hmm. I love this. But then like later on you're like, oh wait. If I was planning a covert mission in the jungle, I'd just take as many Wookiees as I could.
Absolutely.
I'd go to Kashyyyk and just kind of create an army of Wookiees and send them.
We're crewing up. We're going to Endor. Let's go.
Let's go.
Yeah, not the big golden rod. Like I mean, that's
the thing
golden
that's going to stand out and
the
get you immediately
white.
Shot at. Yeah. It makes the It actually kind of brings light to the line in Rogue One when Jyn says to K2, if we're walking around, there's going to be a lot of people that want to shoot at you. Let's put a target by taking the shiniest thing we can find into the jungle.
But crazy. It was the right idea.
That's right.
Did think he was a god and so on, so it did work out.
Turns out it worked out.
But I mean, I think that's the thing. That brief sequence with the Rebels, it does sort of with Han Solo and with Lando, like this idea of like these two characters who, at this point, we hadn't seen, but now obviously we've seen Solo, a Star Wars story. Mm-hmm. The idea that they would be that and then end up as generals in the rebellion, fighting for something much bigger than themselves. That's cool.
Yeah. And they even give us the lead of that when Han says to Lando, "Look at you, a general." Like they're even narratively saying, "Yeah, can you believe it? Neither can we."
Yeah.
Well, that's awesome. And so as we circle in on our final question, as we get ready to wrap up, the third question is, where is the text sending us from here? And the way I always kind of look at this is kind of what is the real world application? What is something that you take from these minutes that you might carry into your life?
As the minutes by themselves, I don't think that there is anything too specific, but knowing the context of the rest of the film obviously is quite different. There's a degree of Luke obviously following his instinct in that, and like listening to his gut. He's been told over and over again that Vader is a baddie. Vader is bad.
That's right.
You must kill the bad guy, and I think he believed that obviously the Empire is all bad, and I must do the thing. He believed it probably going into Bespin, but after Bespin, I think he's got a bit of a different understanding of the universe and everything that's going on, and he doesn't feel it. He doesn't feel that advice and that task is the appropriate one. He hasn't quite maybe made that decision yet in the minutes that we've watched, but certainly he does later on. And like I guess like the takeaway from that is maybe you don't just blindly follow the order, right? Like maybe that's it. You don't. It certainly didn't help the Jedi any like doing that. We know that in the prequels, like just plowing forward.
Right.
I think at a very simple level, it's just like stop, think, listen to yourself, and make a decision that's going to work well for you while being considerate of everything else.
Be in tune to the moment is what I hear. We get different versions of that throughout Star Wars, but I think about Rey training with Luke in Last Jedi be present in the moment. And we hear that a lot in Star Wars with the Jedi about be present. And that's kind of what I hear you saying, Matt, which is don't just blindly do the thing you think you're expected to. Let's sit back a minute and look at it and see where we're actually being directed.
And yeah, like context matters as well. Like everyone telling him, I mean, we didn't know this obviously at the time that the movie came out, but after the prequels and everything like that, that there's, despite all best intentions not for this to be the case, there is something personal in it for Yoda and Obi-Wan.
Right.
And like neither of them I think really can acknowledge or accept that it's their failures, and it was their own failures that kind of led to Anakin sort of becoming Vader. It doesn't, just because they failed doesn't necessarily mean that the next person in line to try to sort something out is going to fail as well.
Right. Yeah, I like that. Sean, what about you? What is kind of your real world takeaway from these minutes?
Sort of going off what Matt says, and sort of like there is a moment in Return of the Jedi which is one of my favorite moments of all of Star Wars, and it is when Luke realizes, like, he stops and he throws the lightsaber away and he says, you failed. I'm a Jedi like my father before me. And it's that thing of like knowing himself, knowing who he is, knowing what he's about. And interestingly, like that ties in so well forwards and backwards, like going back to A New Hope and he's looking out at that binary sunset. He doesn't know who he is. Doesn't know what he wants, doesn't know what his place is in the galaxy. And in Return of the Jedi, he does, but then by the time we get to Last Jedi, he's forgotten it. Or he's believed his own hype to a certain point where he's forgotten those lessons that he had sort of had to, in the end, teach himself. Because his teachers were quite sporadic and all over the place and kept dying and all that. So when we get to the end of Last Jedi and he's facing off against Kylo Ren, he's like, okay, no, he's that man again. He's worked out how to be a Jedi his own way, like what a Jedi is on his terms, which I think is like what throughout Star Wars canon, like that sort of idea of like the Jedi who work out how to do it their own way, like Qui-Gon and people like that, are the ones who sort of seem to know need to be a bit more suited to the world. Whereas the Jedi who are quite dogmatic are the ones who ruin it for everyone.
Correct. I love that. And I think I hear too in that, and for me, maybe the perseverance of Luke Skywalker, despite having the sporadic leadership, the sporadic teachers, he manages to make his way through that journey. And, I am a hardcore lover of The Last Jedi. And so there's so much of that film and, the meta narrative of the whole thing really hits me. But, when he says it's time for the Jedi to end, and you said it, Sean, by the end of Last Jedi, he has come to be a Jedi on his terms. That problematic aspect of the Jedi is gone. The one that was clouded that he talks about with Rey, hubris and the whole thing that they talk about comes back to what it's supposed to be: connection with the Force, connection with making these human decisions as a Jedi, which I think is really powerful, coming from someone who didn't have great leadership along the way. He had great leaders, but the leadership they gave was, as you said, sporadic. That's a great way to describe it.
I think that's it. That's all I've got for that.
I love that. Gentlemen, this has been an amazing conversation. This has been a lot of fun to dig into a movie that I love more as I get older. As we get out of here, tell us where we can find you. Give us the plugs. Tell everybody where they can get connected up with the fun stuff that y'all are going. Anything you're working on that you can talk about. What you got?
I'll say where to find us. Sean, you can say what we're working on next if you like. In as little or as much detail as you want. I think is safe. So find us on YouTube. Really, that's the main thing. Just get on YouTube, search Blue Bantha Milk Co. or Banthaverse. Either of those two searches will find the channel. There's enough tagging and stuff out there that'll get you in the right direction. And yeah, just check out what we do. And if you like having a laugh and don't want to take Star Wars too seriously, then we might be a source for some entertainment for you.
Absolutely.
And yeah, coming up, we've got so me and Matt are currently both writing Calrissian Chronicles. I am no spoilers, but I'm finally explaining what Lando was doing at the Battle of Tanab, which is quite apt considering what we just talked about. We're also working on episode 4.75, which the AI has sort of put me in an interesting situation because I'm the one who's starting this one. So it's put us in an interesting situation where it seems to be wanting to make what if Star Wars was Die Hard? Mm-hmm. So that's quite interesting. I'm sort of going to see where that takes us. We're also working on the Cookbook of Boba Fett, which is I read it last night. It's an absolute work of art.
I can't wait.
Yeah, draft 1 is finished to that. It's well and truly finished now. I think we just got to do some editing on it, but it's pretty good.
It's pretty wild. It's pretty amazing. And also we're working on the Council, which is our sort of Jedi Council office spoof thing that we're kind of working out how best to format it. God, there's lots. And then obviously after that we got 3 more big ones to do for the year. We're considering doing another rewrite of a established scene, which is a lot of fun. And then we got to decide which ones we want to do because there's a lot of options for different feature length ones. There's too many options. Like that's the problem. It's not like this one's better than this one. It's just like, that's my God, if we did this, that would be amazing. But this would be amazing, and
absolutely, so it's a bounty of riches.
That's it. It's just there's too much to, and then they keep making new Star Wars stuff. So I keep like, oh God, maybe we should do something with that. So we got lots in the pipeline, and lots of little things, and messing about with like doing YouTube shorts as well. So keep an eye out for those. And just lots.
That's fantastic. Well, again, I can't thank you guys enough for being here and hanging out tonight. It really has been a pleasure. Well, that's going to wrap it up for this episode of Podcast of the Wills. Thank you so much for joining in and listening to this great conversation. We always appreciate having you along for the ride with us. You can find us on all social media at WillsPod. I also want to remind you to check out the ATG Cast stream wherever you get your podcast, whether it's on Apple, Spotify, and leave us a review. We would love to have some feedback from you about what you think about all the shows we're doing and all the different offerings that are coming out from ATG Cast. We can't wait to be with you again in 2 weeks when we're going to return for Return of the Jedi Canon Study Chapter 4 with our special guest, Mr. Alex Damon. So until we talk to you then, may the Force be with you always.